Hey guys, so if you want to know how to never lose a customer again, you're going to want to tune into this interview. It is a deep dive interview with Joey Coleman, the author of Never Lose a Customer Again. We're going to talk about how to improve your new client onboarding experience and really the 8 phases that you need to incorporate into your client journey so that you can actually keep clients longer, get them through that stage of buyer's remorse, and really increase their lifetime value and make sure they turn into super raving fans. So let's hop into that interview right now. I hope you enjoy. Joey, welcome to the show. I'm really stoked on chatting with you about new client fulfillment, delivering on the results you promised, and really never losing a customer again. So thank you for spending your time with us. We really appreciate it.
Oh, Greg, it's my honor. And thanks so much for everybody who's chiming in and listening today. So appreciate you making some time to sit in and listen to our conversation. I've been looking forward to this for a while.
I love it. So for everybody watching, the reason why I wanted to have Joey on, he wrote a great book, Never Lose a Customer Again. And I was just telling him before we started recording that we reached a phase in our business where we realized the importance of, not that we didn't realize the importance of like client delivery and client success before, but when you dive into all the masterminds and get all the coaches like we've done to grow, everyone says when you hit a 7-figure run rate, it actually goes really from sales and marketing back into, hey, like you got to really hunker down, make sure that clients are getting the results, they're getting taken care of, fix onboarding. And so as a team, we devoured your book, as I was telling you, and we've started applying a lot of the 8 phases that you talked about in the book. And so I wanted to talk about those. You have a marketing agency, and now you are literally speaking around the world and consulting with businesses of all sizes, big brands that we probably buy their products, and many smaller organizations as well that will probably resemble some of the folks that are going to be watching this. So first, I kind of want to jump back to your marketing agency experience. So like you said, you ran an agency, and maybe I'm just making the assumption because you did talk a little bit about in the book, but like you obviously didn't know all of this stuff when you were doing your agency. And so where was the, okay, I was running this agency, I'm struggling or I'm frustrated, that you started having some of the realization that, hey, this is not really all about who can acquire the most customers, it's who can keep the most customers?
Yeah, I so appreciate that question, Greg. Basically, I was running my agency. We did logo design, we built websites, we did ad campaigns. I mean, basically everything a traditional branding marketing experience agency would do. And one of the jobs that we regularly had for our clients was develop a campaign that brings in new customers, right? This is kind of the ante up chips to have a marketing business. And what I realized is we were really good at driving leads, driving qualified leads that converted and actually became customers. What was frustrating was when I would go back to those clients a month later, 6 months later, a year later, and say, oh, great, how's the business continued to grow? They're like, well, Joey, the ad campaign worked incredibly well. We got all these people coming in, but we didn't really keep them. So like our business is kind of at the same level. And I'm like, wait a second, why are folks so focused on getting customers, but unable to keep customers? And it really turned into an itch that I wanted to scratch, which is I didn't feel comfortable about companies paying me all this money to get them, as I said, the qualified leads that would turn into customers. Like that's in most marketing businesses where our job ends. But I was like, why aren't you keeping them? Why isn't it changing your business and your structure and your operations going forward? And what I realized is that so many businesses over-index on acquisition to the detriment of retention. And it led me to start experimenting with my clients. We would say, all right, you can hire us to do the ad campaign, but you're also going to hire us to do the onboarding. And we are going to dissect the onboarding of new customers and what you do and how you do it and why you do it. And we are going to figure out why customers are leaving and put in place the systems and the processes and the techniques and the touch points that will keep them, that will stop them from leaving. And after about a decade of doing that, I started speaking on it. I wrote a book on it. I started doing more consulting on it and transitioned away from running the ad agency and focusing on getting customers, and instead started teaching people how to keep their customers.
So this could actually be an entirely separate episode, but the way you just said that, I think is, in your experience, is it common that you see people go through the journey like you did? Like they have this agency, they maybe like zone in on something, maybe it's from within their practice of their agency, and or they kind of discover something like you did about onboarding and retention. And all of a sudden you actually walk away from the traditional or the agency model, and you kind of have this, like you've developed such an expertise that you're now getting paid for that expertise expertise on that one little thing that can impact so many. Like, do you see that happening to a lot of other people? Because like fundamentally, that's what we teach a lot of our clients, is to like hone in on that expertise, and that can turn into a whole new revenue stream. It could even take over and surpass, replace, you doing your traditional like website design services. Like, was that part of the plan in the long run, or like where did you start realizing that was an opportunity?
Yeah, I wouldn't say it was part of the plan. I wish it was part of the plan, right? That kind of level of foresight. But what I realized is the more I leaned into it, the more I enjoyed it, the more impact I was able to have for my clients. And the more I realized that this was a need that just wasn't being served in the marketplace. So for context, if we were to go on Amazon and we were to go to the category of books and search for marketing, just to see how many books came up with the keyword marketing, we wrote that number down. And then we'd search for sales and we'd write that number down, and we'd add those two numbers together. We get just over 1.3 million books that have been written on sales and marketing. Now imagine erasing those search results, and instead we search for customer service, customer experience, customer loyalty, account management, relationship management, all the phrases that you and I might come up with to describe what happens after the sale. Yeah. And even though some of those search terms would come up with the same book, right, under various terms, we still just took all the raw numbers and added them together. We'd come up with about 30,000 books. Wow. So what that tells us is, at least in the area of books, there are 43 books written about how to get a customer before there is one book written about how to keep a customer. And I think that is instructive. I think most organizations have a marketing department. They have a sales department, and then they have like an ops team or a call center or a receptionist. And it's like, wait a second, why is it that we have a whole department for marketing that usually reports to the CEO, a whole department for sales that reports to the CEO, and then everything that happens with actually delivering the value, operations, customer service, customer experience, all of those things usually report up to somebody in marketing or sales instead of directly to the CEO.
Yeah.
We are, as human beings, designed to over-index on the chase. We like dating more than marriage. We like hunting more than gathering, right? We like going out and finding something new instead of deepening the relationship with something we already have. And so I think there's a biological imperative. I think there's an organizational structural imperative. I think there's an educational imperative. And I think all of those things combine to create a world where more people seem to care about getting customers than keeping customers, and often to their own detriment. Now, to bring it back to your question, and forgive me for that background for it, but I think what happens is most agencies wake up one day and they realize we are constantly chasing new business. We are constantly reinventing the wheel. We are constantly trying to figure out, how do we get more? Wouldn't it be nice if we could just keep some of what we caught? Wouldn't it be nice if we could go deeper? Wouldn't it be nice if we could move the dial and work with clients on a retainer or a long-term relationship instead of on a campaign? And so what happens is, when we begin to make that shift, not only is it more interesting to us, but the impact and the value we can provide is greater, because we're talking about long-term conversations. We're talking about lifetime value instead of conversion rates and click-throughs. And I'm not saying those things are bad. I don't want anyone to have this impression of like, oh, geez, he used to be one of us and now he's a defector. No, I just think that there is more to life than your next campaign.
Yes.
And that's just what I want to help people to understand, that like, I'm not anti next campaign. I do campaigns all the time and figure out what I'm going to promote next and what I'm going to grow next, but not to the detriment of the groundwork that I've already laid.
Yeah, I love that. And that kind of begs the question of the web design agencies, the ad agencies, even the agencies that we work with. One of the things we help people do is redesign their core offer, right? And it's like, I think a lot of agencies, at least that come to us, they sell directly into a retainer, which I usually don't recommend. They jump in and like, you don't see the result of the work for like months. And so like by the time you're even getting close, possibly even recouping the investment of the fulfillment, like they're leaving. And so selling something smaller, a project, some other sort of outcome that is able to be achieved in a 30, 60, 90-day window. That being said, we do get people that come with a project that is like a one-time deliverable.
Sure.
And so the thing that I see happening is, well, you've never built on or added to or expanded your revenue streams to complement that first project that sets you up to have an ongoing recurring arrangement, whether that's, a more formal retainer or advisory, or even these days, like a continuity program of some sort. Like, people just only have a one-trick pony, and it's like, oh, well, I have to go deliver the website. Now, this person doesn't need a new website, $20 a month for web hosting. Like, that's not going to keep the lights on. So they have to go get more website clients. Do you see that it's like a model and an offer problem for a lot of people, at least in the agency world?
Yeah, I mean, I absolutely think it can be a model and an offer problem. I think it can be a philosophical problem. I think it can be an emotional problem, right?
Fair.
So a couple thoughts on that, right? So the
Yeah.
model, exactly as you said, like, oh, well, I already built you one website. How much more website do you need? Also, this whole idea of let's sell into a retainer. I liken this stuff to dating. So imagine going out on a first date with someone, okay?
Yeah.
And saying, hey, no, we haven't even ordered yet. You're sitting down to dinner. But I think we should agree right now that we do a date every week for the next year. And that'll be awesome. And you'll pay for us to go on a date every week for the next year. We'll maybe do a meeting, maybe like a phone call or something, like a little status check of sorts, and just see kind of how things are going. How's this relationship developing? And it's like, we haven't even ordered yet. What are you talking about? No, this is not a successful model. Let's go on a date and have a good time. Let's have some results. Let's have some excitement. Let's have an experience. And then if it's great, let's come back for more. So I agree with you. I think people sell into the retainer and the long-term relationship way too fast. That being said, the philosophical problem then is, well, if you're only thinking about we're doing this campaign, we're doing this launch, we're doing this website, we're doing this product, that's fine. But philosophically, you're limiting the scope of things that you can do. You're not looking further down the road. Now, I'm all about narrowing down to your expertise and focusing on what you're really good on. I think a lot of agencies get in trouble because they decide that in their effort to have long-term relationships, they want to become experts in everything. You mentioned web hosting, okay? One of the things that I always used to do when we built websites, we did no hosting. People would be like, oh, well, you're building the website, right? Hosting. I'm like, because I'm not a web host. I don't want to be a technical expert. I don't want you calling me at 3 a.m. when your website's down. Okay. I want you dealing with somebody who all they do is web hosting. And we've looked at the options. Here's the choices. Yes, you have a $200 a month, but here's a $100 a month company that's going to be 5 times more expensive. But if something goes wrong, they're fixing it in minutes as opposed to hours. So if you have the kind of site that needs that kind of responsiveness, you're doing e-com, you're losing clicks and traffic and dollars every second, you want to be with $100 a month or more, right? If you have a brochureware site and you're an accountant, I say this lovingly to the accountants out there, nobody at 3 a.m. is going, well, I'm not going to hire them because their website's down on a Friday night at 3 a.m., right? So it really depends on what your business is. And philosophically, what kind of business do you want to be in? Last but not least, emotionally, we get into this thought of most business owners, myself included, love the dopamine hit. We love the adrenaline hit. I closed the deal. I got the client. Oh, great. Now we got to deliver. All right. So we over-index on chasing the emotion of the dopamine hit instead of the continuity of the experience. And so when you've got leaders and CEOs and founders who are so driven on where's the next piece of business coming from, you get into this emotional habit that is antithetical to long-term relationships because it's about, well, I'm not getting as big of a hit of landing the new deal when my existing client just renewed for another 6-month retainer. Like, whatever. I would rather go get the brand new website with 17 phases and 3 rollouts. And we're going to do an app too. Oh my God, it's going to be amazing. No, that's one way to do business. But if you're constantly chasing that, you're going to end up having some emotional holes in other areas of your business in your life.
Totally. It's exhausting. And that kind of brings me to there were 2 things that I realized where, I alluded to earlier. We were like, let's reread the book. Let's start implementing some of these things. The first one was a stat that you shared in your book, and I've seen other versions of it in other places. I'm sure the number has grown, but it was a 5% improvement in retention could yield a 25 to a 100% increase in profits.
Exactly.
And so that was like wait a minute, what? And so if you could just keep, in some cases for some people, just one more client longer, how that impacts your profit margin, because obviously the cost to acquire a client is higher than the cost of keeping one that you already spent money to acquire prior. And so that was kind of the first aha moment. And then,
well, and if I may, Greg, for the folks that are listening along, that were like, wait a minute, I was told there would be no math, right? I signed up for this podcast. Why is it 5%, 25 to 100%? Let me break it down very easily for folks. Because lots of times, and you're totally right, people look at that and they say, well, they recoup the acquisition costs. The problem with that kind of thinking and that kind of philosophy is the average business owner, especially in the marketing agency space, and I say this lovingly, doesn't accurately track what their acquisition cost is. Because you're having fun. You're doing pitches. This is what you were born to do. You're not thinking about, oh my God, how much time am I spending on this pitch? We're printing out all these materials. How much are we investing in doing this? How much business are we chasing that we're not getting? What is the amount of time and effort we're putting in? And how are we recouping that build-in cost? More importantly, the reason why keeping somebody longer increases your profitability is twofold. Number one, if you have an existing client base, you are probably already covering your operating expenses. You're covering your lights, you're covering your people, you're covering your internet connectivity, your cell phone bills, all of that. Each additional dollar you earn, once you've already paid for those base operational expenses, becomes more profitable because you don't have to get more cell phones or more internet. Granted, maybe you hire more people as you grow, but there's this interesting space where adding dollars becomes more profitable. Additionally, when you know a client, when you know how they think, when you know how they talk, when you know what they look for, your ability to create content for them and ad campaigns for them and materials for them becomes more efficient. Because you learn their voice. So in the beginning, when you're working with someone, you're either trying to find their voice or create their voice or learn their voice. When you've been working with someone for 2 or 3 years, it got to the point where with some of my clients, I had a large HVAC and home energy company that I worked with. It got to the point where the CMO would call me and he'd be like, Joey, we want to do a direct mail piece to drive this. And I'd say, great, give me 2 days and I'll be back to you with creative and copy. None of this, hey, let's get the copy ready. And that's all it was. And I would send him stuff over and he'd be like, yep, send it to press. Like no rounds of revisions. By the way, who's at home just was like, oh my God, really? No rounds of revisions? Yes, no rounds of revisions. No, let me get 17 people on a committee to approve this. I'm not saying that I was amazing and awesome and that's why I was able to do that. What I'm saying is I had learned their voice as well as they knew their voice. And the CMO knew that and trusted me. And so we could build things out much more effectively and efficiently. Do you think the rates that we were charging to develop that campaign were more profitable than the first ones? Absolutely. Because now there's no back and forth. And my designers loved it too. And my copywriters, because I'd go to them, I'd be like, hey, this is what we need. Boom, boom, boom. These 3 talking points. I'm thinking this kind of image because I was a creative director, build this out. Boom. And we create it. And they're feeling the joy of building something out instead of the drudge of the back and forth and how many approvals and how many changes and make the logo bigger. Okay, great. Thank you.
Make it pop.
Make it pop. I'll know it when I see it.
There's so much to be said for the efficiency in our world with a lot of our clients. You know, they come to us as generalists. Every project starts from scratch. We help them specialize on delivering one thing. And it's like you deliver one thing 100 times, you will be shocked at how much more efficient you are the 100th time, right? Like you get better, you get faster. You could do it with less cost, less back and forth. And that obviously also puts money back in your pocket in the form of profit. So yeah, that really did hit home. And then the other one was, I joined this like mastermind program or whatever with people that are above 7 figures and beyond. Made me feel like a little turtle. And like I broke down our business. And at the time we only had like a 90-day thing. And they're like, wait, what are you doing? Like, where's the like recurring? I'm like, oh, we don't really have a lot of that. They're like, get it like as fast as possible. As I got to know these people and you see inside of these businesses that crushing it in this industry. And like you find out that's like, oh, like they're keeping hundreds of clients active, at a time. And it's like, whoa, okay. They weren't just adding 150 new clients every month. They just added a handful here and there slowly.
Yeah, they added 3 and they didn't lose any. And that's the thing. The mindset shift that happens when you approach your business that way is incredible because now all of the pressure of, oh, well, we got to go land 4 new clients this quarter or else we aren't going to be able to pay for next quarter goes away. Then landing new clients becomes icing on the cake instead of the foundational substance you need to keep the lights on. And it totally changes not only your experience, I would posit of the work, but I also found that it changed our level of creativity. There's a difference in creativity when you're coming from a place of scarcity and when you're coming from a place of an abundance. And if you can come from a place of abundance, I think the quality of the work shows.
Yeah, agreed. So I want to cover the 8 phases that need to kind of happen in the first 100 days. If you've read the book and you're listening, you know that the first 100 days are critical. But I want to touch on something that to like lead us into these 8. You make this comment, and I think I want to hear you articulate it, because reading is one thing, but hearing you and then having everyone else kind of look at the difference between customer experience and customer service. You call the two out. And years ago, I would say that I totally missed this, but as we're in the stage that we're in and what led us back to this book, I'm like, oh my God, like it's all clicking. So can you share with us the actual difference?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm a words guy, right? And so I want to look at what is the definition of customer service and what is the definition of customer experience.
Yeah.
So the definition of customer service is the assistance or advice provided by a company to those people who buy or use its products or services. So assistance and advice. Mm-hmm. Customer experience is how customers perceive their interactions with your company. Basically, think of it this way. Customer service is reactive. Something happened with the client. Oh, we got to respond. We got to do something. We've got to serve them. Customer experience is proactive. How do we want them to feel? What is the experience in the interaction we want to create? When they do business with us, what are they thinking, feeling, learning, doing? Those things are customer experience. Now, I'm not anti-customer service. What I am anti is doing customer service thinking it's creating the experience. That's a piece of the experience, but it's an element under the umbrella of customer experience instead of the whole enchilada.
Yeah, one thing that we talk a lot about with our clients, especially as like we kind of refine into, hey, deliver this one thing and master it. It's the word I use is like choreography. Like if you're delivering the same thing over and over again, you should know over a little bit of time and experience what problems they're going to run into when they have specific questions, and you can combat all of that in advance proactively, versus reactively, like you're saying, which, how to solve the problem before they even knew they had the problem because you've done this 100 times. And that creates a lot of the efficiency, but also that emotional component, they'll feel like they're taken care of. So
absolutely. Well, one of the things I used to say, Greg, when I designed logos, for example, we'd sit down, we'd have our first meeting, and I'd walk through, here's the process. And I'd say, so here's what's going to happen. I'm going to show you the first group of logos, and I'm going to show you 10 different concepts. And one of two things is going to happen. You're either going to look at it and go, yes, that's the one. Or you're going to look at it and say, none of them's the one. Those are the only two experiences you can have. You're not going to say, well, I like this one and this one and this one and this one. Oh, and I can't decide. Maybe. But more often it's going to be either that's it and that's what you want. Or you're going to say, well, I'll know it when I see it. And none of these are it. Both of those are things we're trying to avoid. And people would say, wait, you're trying to avoid that's the one? Yes, I'm trying to avoid that's the one. Because if you're picking one without any consideration for the other ones, it means that some of the things we're emphasizing over here, we need to be taking into consideration. If you're looking at all of them and saying none of them are this, it's equally saying you're thinking there's some one magical answer that's the answer, and there isn't. Yeah. So I would pre-frame that at the beginning. And then when we sat down to do the initial reveal, I'd be like, hey, let's remember, it's not going to be one of these, and it's not going to be, I'll know it when I see it. What we're trying to do is narrow the field. We're trying to pick the best 2 or 3, and then we're going to live with those for a while. And by live with it, I mean, you're not going to go home and text your college roommate and ask them what they think. We would also agree to who was on the logo committee before we showed them one design. And I would say, here's the thing. If you want to change who's on the logo committee after we agree on this, that's fine. It's just $10,000 per person. And they'd be like, what do you mean it's $10,000 per person? Because this person is going to be a cancer in this project. This person that you haven't identified now, but you're going to identify later, is going to cause all the problems. And we're going to have you pay more to make sure that you really want to bring them in. Now, it's not because I want to make $10,000 more. And it's not because we're going to have $10,000 more of work, because frankly, we're probably going to have closer to $20,000 more of work if you bring someone in at the last minute with an opinion. What we want to do is decide before we're in the emotional state of looking at designs what we want.
Mm-hmm.
So to your point, when you've done this, when you've gone through the choreography enough, you know what the issues are going to be. Now, as I'm sharing these stories, there's some people listening going, oh yeah, I've had the person get added at the last minute. Oh, I've had that. I'll know it when I see it. Oh, I've had that. I want it to pop more. Or it's not really red. I want it to be red. Well, what the hell does red mean? You got to work with me. We got to have a common language, a common interaction. But if we pre-frame what those are, then when we come to them, we can have fun. We can say, oh no, you're thinking about getting the roommate involved, aren't you? I can tell. I can feel it. Is it the roommate? Oh no, it's the ex-girlfriend. Oh no, it's your mom. Who is it? Who is it in your life that you're suddenly going to bring into this conversation that has not been part of any of these conversations? And now you want them to be the deciding factor on whether you move forward with this design or not.
I love it. So you've used the word pre-frame like a numerous amount of times. And I think that's really critical to kind of just one, I think delivering a great service is being able to constantly pre-frame all communications. But that kind of leads into, it starts before they gave you the money, which I think is good opportunity for us to jump into the 8 phases. So phase 1 is assess. So that's, for me, how I interpreted that was, that's what like the sales process, they're deciding if they want to actually hire you or do business with you. And it's your opportunity for probably the sales rep of some sort is sharing what to expect. Is that?
Yes, it's not only sharing what to expect, but it's previewing what to expect. And what do I mean by the distinction there? When you say, oh, we're going to be super responsive and we're going to do a great job and you're going to love working with us, be super responsive instead of telling them you're going to be super responsive. Show them what it's going to be, right? Show them the extra attention to detail. Show the idea of you're going to bring something to the table they haven't thought of. One of my favorite things when we used to pitch, we'd go in and they'd be like, oh, we're going to have a pitch. And a lot of people have strong opinions about spec work. They're like, do you do spec work or not? Right. And for those that may not be familiar with this concept of phrase, it's like, do you design the campaign as part of the pitch and then show it to them when then they can take that pitch and go somewhere else? Or what do you do? What I used to do is I'd walk in and I'd say, hey, look, you are considering a couple different people to work with. Instead of us coming in here and showing you our concepts and showing you the ideas we created in a vacuum before we even met with you, we're going to do a working session right now. I want everybody to put away their notebooks. We brought colors. We brought Legos. We brought Post-it notes, whatever it may be. And we're going to build a mini version of what you're asking to do right here and right now. You're going to get a chance to see how we work, how we think, how we act, how we feel. You're going to get a chance to feel the tension and the dynamic. You're going to get a chance to make some decisions, and we'll narrow the funnel as we go. And at the end of our pitch session, you will actually know what it's like to work with us instead of having an imagining of what it would be like to work with us. And then if you decide that you don't like that, great, go work with someone else. If you decide that the concept we come up with during this little mini session is one that you want to take to your in-house team or to someone else and run with it, great. This is, for us, the cost of doing business, because we also want to learn what it's like to work with you. We want to see how you're going to respond when we push. We want to see who's actually in charge in this room. We want to do some of those things. So guess what? You're evaluating us. We're evaluating you. Let's dive in. Greg, as you might imagine, the conversations were entirely different. No one else that was pitching was having that conversation. And let me tell you, we lost some, but we won a lot more. And the reason we won them, they would tell me is, God, we knew what it was going to be like to work with you. You actually asked us questions before you presented ideas. You actually dove deep into why we're even doing this campaign before you got excited about the creativity of the campaign. Because half the time we'd come in and we'd be like, why are we even doing this? Oh, we need to drive more revenue. Is this the best way to drive revenue? Creating an entirely new product, going into an entirely new market. We feel this is the best way to eke out a 10% increase in revenue for the year. Let me tell you, the best way to get 10% increase in revenue this year is to go to your existing customers and get them to buy more. Has anybody had that conversation with you? Well, that's not as sexy. That's not as, I know. But you know what? That's what will actually move the dial. And if I can get you to sell 10% more to every existing customer, what would that do to your bottom line? Oh my God, Joey, that would actually increase our bottom line 38%. Awesome. So if I was going to increase it 38%, do you think you'd be willing to pay me a percentage of that increase and maybe nothing else? Wait, what? Yeah. Can we put our money where our mouth is and say we track where sales are today? We come back in 6 months, we look at the differential and we get to keep 30%. How does that feel? Geez, we don't pay our salespeople that much. I know, but they haven't done that, have they? Because if they would have done that, we wouldn't be having this conversation. Oh, now we're having a very different kind of conversation. And now the relationship is not one of vendor. The
Yeah.
relationship is one of partner.
And
And it's not
because,
just,
yeah, and because you went through that process, fundamentally assessing them, you showed them what they could expect. They were able to assess you, which then goes into the phase two, which is where they admit that they have the problem and they believe you are the one to solve it. That's accurate?
exactly. Yeah.
It's like
So
where
the
like they
admit
pick
phase,
you.
they pick you. They sign on the dotted line. They hand over their hard-earned cash. They enter into a relationship. They say, it's you. Let's work together. Now, here's the challenge with the admit phase. It's the next phase, phase three, that comes, the affirm phase.
Yeah.
So
This is the one
you
that
go home.
I was looking
Yeah.
at.
This is the
Yeah.
one that everybody has
Yeah.
challenges with, right? So here's the thing. You leave the meeting. You're like, yes, we landed the deal. They signed on the paper. We got the contract. You go celebrate. You're ringing bells. You're high-fiving. Somebody won a trip to Napa. The team is feeling great, right? Meanwhile, the client, they're going, oh, I hope we made the right decision. You know, we interviewed 3 companies. The other 2 companies just came in and did their pitches and showed us some creative, and we liked their ideas. But Joey's team, they were kind of weird. They made us roll up our sleeves and do that homework, but God, it felt good. But what if we made the wrong choice? They're more expensive than those other 2. How are we going to get our money back if it doesn't work out? How much time are we going to lose? What's the board of directors going to think about this new approach to getting money from our existing clients instead of doing the thing that the person who's the secretary on the board wanted to do, which is create this whole new product and dive into a new market? Huh. So we're at home celebrating, our emotions are high, their emotions are low. In common parlance, we call this buyer's remorse. Now, almost everybody that's listening has heard the phrase buyer's remorse. But if I were to ask you, do you have a system in your process, a system and process in your business designed to address the buyer's remorse that we scientifically know every customer experiences? The reality is most businesses, most agencies don't. So then the question becomes, well, Joey, what should we do? Well, what we need to do is affirm their choice. This is why phase 3 is called affirm. We want to affirm their decision to work with us. We want to give them evidence, proof, data, feelings right away that they made the right choice. It can be something as simple as that night sending a text to the CEO that says, I got to tell you, I'm still buzzing. We spent the drive home after our meeting talking about a bunch of new ideas we have for you. I know we've got the kickoff call coming in a week. We're getting ready to do that. We're going to be super excited for that. But I want you to know the team is already working for you. This is going to be awesome. I made the right choice. They like me. I like them. We're good. This stuff is just human. People talk about being B2B or B2C. No, we're all H to H. It's human to human interaction. And what are you doing to create the kind of experiences and the kind of emotions that make people want to come back for more? The good news is the bar for customer experience is lying on the ground globally. We expect crappy customer experiences. So much so that lots of times we're out with a friend or a significant other, might be, and we have a positive experience. And we're like, oh my gosh, can you believe this waiter? He's amazing. Oh my gosh, can you believe the mechanic? They told me what was actually wrong before they fixed it. Oh my gosh, can you believe this, handyman that we hired to come to the house? They actually showed up 5 minutes early and they took their shoes off when they came into the house and they asked questions. And they said, let me email you a quote. And when the quote came over, it detailed all the things they were going to do instead of like a handwritten Post-it note that said $800. This stuff works.
Yeah.
If you just pay a little bit of attention.
One of the things that we did when we looked at the affirm phase is we use a tool called Bonjoro. And so when a client comes in, I send a personal message to them. I say their name. Like automation lets me know to send the message, but I customize the message.
Right.
You mentioned in the book, like actually, like the handheld phone walking shot, you're walking the dog, actually will work better than like this fully produced, he's got the light on, the camera's all set up.
Right.
Like it hits more on that emotional side of things. So, and that's such a low, such like an easy thing to do, like low hanging fruit to start doing.
Exactly. And because it's an easy thing to do, Greg,
People don't do it.
in some ways, that's why people don't do it, right?
Yeah.
And here's the great thing. You said something that I don't want to miss, because I get this question a lot. People say to me, well, Joey, what do you think about automation? Okay. Automation is a tool that should be used to remind you that an interaction should be happening.
Yeah.
It is not the tool that you rest your interactions on.
Right.
So you get the reminder that says, hey, we signed a new client.
Yeah.
You should send a video. Then you go shoot the video. Now, it may even be the case, Greg, and you don't have to confess this if you don't want to. I told you, it may be that in that video, you want to mention 3 things. Every time you want to mention the same 3 things.
Yeah.
You want to call out the specific point of contact they're going to have and really promote that person and give them status. You want to let them know that you're in on the story, that you didn't just find out, that you knew about it all the way along, so that you're aware that the owner is kind of in on the conversation. And you want to give them your personal contact info, maybe your cell phone number. Hey, if by the way you have problems, Jane is absolutely going to be able to take care of you. But if you ever have a challenge with Jane, or you ever a challenge where Jane isn't being as responsive you need her to be, here's my personal cell phone number. Text me and I will respond. And by the way, just text me and let me know you got this video, because then it's in your phone and you can just have it, be, hey, text Greg for problems, or text Greg if you need to chat offline.
Yeah.
Now, you may know that you always want to include those 3 things, but you're not giving a script.
Right.
So the automation is, I will automatically talk about these 3 things. The personalization is you saying, these are 3 bullet points that I'm going to talk about, as opposed to, and this is the script that I'm going to read that sounds like I'm reading it, that sounds like this is the 8th video I've shot today. No, that's not what you want to do.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. We talk a lot about how automation should help kind of like make your human interactions that much better, because they don't fall through the cracks. You're reminded, and it should make it almost makes your humans like superhumans,
Exactly.
So you touched on a couple things there that I think lead into all of the phases. But one of the other phases, I believe, is, I forget which one it's actually in, but it's like something about laying out all the steps, which I guess you sort of also do in the assess phase. But like, when you could come in now and you're saying, hey, here's what's happening next. You're going to talk to, whoever, are excited for the kickoff call in a week's time, because your kickoff call is always in a week's time. That like those sorts of things, like I believe in some ways you're actually training your client to be a good client. When you're like, reply back to me and let me know that you got this. Like, them doing that actually is going to make a difference when you're like 6 months in and you're like, hey, let me know when you've done what I asked you to do. Right. Like, they're like your little micro actions that like stack up over time, that like, oh, like you're kind of training this behavior that is going to come in handy throughout the entire delivery process. Yeah. So I love that.
Absolutely. Greg, I'm a big believer, when somebody asks a question, well, when do I need to tell the client what comes next? When do I need to let them know what's happening? Every time you talk to them.
Yeah.
Literally every time you talk to them. I just got off a call before we started recording this with a client that I've been working with for 10 months. And you know how I ended the call? Hey, thanks so much. Love the call. Really appreciate it. Just to recap, what I'm going to do after this call, before I close shop tonight, is send you these 3 things that I promised. What you're going to do is find out from your colleagues when we're going to meet next week and send me the calendar invite. Super excited to get that calendar invite, and keep your eyes open for the email that I'll be sending tonight that details the 3 things I promised.
Yeah.
You're constantly reminding them what's next. And here's the thing. Some people look at that and they're like, well, Joey, that's so boring. We're a creative agency. We don't need to be restricted by these type of things. Look, at the end of the day, do you want to do the work? Do you want them to keep doing work with you? We are all busy.
Yeah.
We are all crazy busy in our lives. When we have somebody that follows up a meeting with a recap email, when we have someone that sends an agenda before a meeting, when we have someone that asks questions in a context and a framework, and instead of sending me 8 emails with 1 question each, sends me 1 email and says, I had 8 questions. I thought I'd put them in here. Feel free to respond. But if you could respond by next Thursday at 5 p.m., that'll be great, because next Thursday at 6 p.m., we're going to be having a meeting to review your answers.
Yeah.
Now we've set some expectations. And I think at the end of the day, most people are very open to expectation management. It's just expectation management often turns into this almost like punishing. Well, we don't do that and we don't do this. And it's like, no, expectation management is we're going to do this and you're going to do that. And if there are other things that come up, we're going to have a conversation about it. But we know our jobs and know our jobs well enough that if you just trust our process, you trust our system, we'll be good. When I used to design logos, the first round was always in black and white, no color.
Mm-hmm.
And people would be like, oh, but Joey, I told you I want it to be red. I know you want it to be red, and I'm going to show it to you in red. But I don't want to have a discussion about which red is it before we decide what it is in black and white. Why do we want to do it in black and white? Because that's where it's going to show up a lot more than you think. People will be like, oh, really? Come on. In this digital era, do you know how many people print stuff out and don't do the color version because they want to save the pennies? They're like, I'll just print the proposal in black and white. Yeah. It'll be fine.
It's got to work in
They're
black and white.
They're not going to see your beautiful 4-color. It's got to work in black and white. It's got to work at 1 inch by 1 inch. It's got to work at a small scale. If it's so complex that it doesn't work at that scale, we're going to have lots of problems later. So we would do the initial designs were all 1 inch by 1 inch black and white. People would be like, these are tiny. I'm like, yeah. And then I would pull out the 4 inch by 4 inch version. And I'd say, now that you've looked at them at 1 inch, now let's look at them at 4 inches. Wow, this one looks a lot better at 4 inches than at 1 inch. Well, that's a whole separate conversation we get to have now, right? And we would use it as an opportunity to educate our clients while also managing their expectations.
I love it. Now, I know I want to be respectful of time. I want to like kind of move through some of these last phases, but we go to activate, and which is phase 4, and then acclimate, which depending upon your service. So activate is like the first major interaction post sale, which for most people is like a kickoff call, which the reason why I love the affirm phase is that like if there's any sort of gap between phase 2 and phase 4, something needs to happen. So like having the affirmation piece in there, the affirm piece in there is like starting to fill some of these gaps between, hey, the transaction is now over and the meaningful work is now starting. Like there's something happening there.
Absolutely. Well, how often do people sign the contract and then they say, by the time we can get the whole team together, it'll be about 30 days from now. And you're like, awesome. So while everyone's super excited, then we'll come back in 30 days when people are like, wait, why are we coming to this meeting again?
Yeah, totally.
And all the things have happened. We need to fill the gaps. We need our clients at all times to know that we are thinking of them, we're working on the next thing, and we're excited about what's happening. If you took nothing else from this podcast, other than think about how often your client is sitting there going, I wonder if they're working. We're paying them,
right?
This retainer. I wonder what's happening, right? Most people believe this philosophy that no one wants to see how the sausage is made, okay? They've heard that phrase. And they're like, well, nobody wants to see it. Sorry, friends. People do want to see how it works. There's some really interesting research, and I'll keep this short because I know we're on time. There's some really interesting research about those websites that are aggregators for airline flights. So you go and you put in and you can kind of see all the different airlines and what their pricing is. So the algorithm that runs behind the machinations that run behind happens very fast. You type in your name of your, where you are, where you want to fly to, the date, and you hit enter. And almost as quickly as you hit enter, the computer knows all the responses it wants to produce. But if you've ever gone to one of those sites, first we see American Airlines, and then we see United, and then we see Delta, and then we see Frontier, and then we see, it builds them over time. The reason for that is humans want to think that the computer is thinking, that because if the computer is thinking, it means that the results are more accurate and more valuable. Now that is insane when we think about it. Welcome to the human mind.
Yeah.
Right? We want to see the work. There are reasons why people go on YouTube videos and they watch somebody do unboxing, or they go on a YouTube video and they watch somebody like piecing something and building something together. I saw a video the other night that was 11 minutes of somebody putting together the light for their podcast. An 11-minute video of unboxing and taking it out. And here's where you plug it in. And this had like 30,000 views. I'm like, 30,000 people watched an 11-minute video on how to get this out of the box. But guess who was 30,001? That would be me watching the video to make sure I do it. People want to see how things are done, and we have the opportunity to show and tell them.
I love that. And that kind of is part of the acclimation phase, right?
Exactly.
It's like where they learn about the way you work.
They learn about your way of doing things. They learn about your systems and your processes. And this is the phase where more than any of the other phases, you need to constantly be reminding them what comes next. Because the acclimate phase in some businesses might be 6 months, Might be a year before
Right.
they really understand how it works. That's when we really need to double down. And that takes us to phase 6, the accomplish
Yeah.
phase, where they achieve the goal
Yeah.
they had when they originally decided to do business with you.
So quick question on that. So fundamentally, like you said, the acclimate could be happening over and over. So like to me, that seems like at least how we're doing it. Like we have a kickoff call, which would be the activate phase, phase 4, but like we walk through the process on that call. So like we're simultaneously like we're activating and acclimating at the same time. Is that
right?
I'm assuming that's common. Like
Very
some of
common.
these
Here's the question I would ask, Greg.
simultaneously.
Yeah, here's the question I would ask. When those folks hang up the call, if their next call was with me, and I said, hey, I know you just had a call with Greg and his team where they told you kind of what the process is going to be. Tell me what the process is going to be. Repeat it back. Could they do it?
Possible.
Now, a lot of people just got really nervous, Greg included.
Probably not.
If you're not watching,
yeah,
it's like, oh God, yeah, we would. And here's the thing: it's not because you're not doing a good job; it's because they're human. They're not listening. They're not paying attention.
Yeah,
they're more excited about. I can't wait to see the website. Or they're in a situation where they're like, oh my gosh, we just got to get this site launched because if I don't get revenue numbers up, I'm losing my job. 9 times out of 10, what the client is thinking has nothing to do with you. And you're just soldiering on, pushing ahead. Oh, and here's how what phase 17 will look like. Good God. If you're explaining to them anything that is even our discussion of the 8 phases. Some people are like, God, I'm not even sure which phase we're in anymore. I'm lost. How many are there? God, we're coming up on the hours. Are you going to get to all 8? What are you? Right? Humans are humans. This is the way it works.
Totally.
Right? So what can we do to constantly be reminding them? And don't flood them. Don't give them too much. Tell them what the next thing is. That's all they really need to know. What comes next?
Now for the accomplished phase. So like they get what they were seeking when they
get what they wanted.
They get the result.
Now, here's the interesting thing. Let's talk about the website, right? Somebody builds a website. What's the accomplished phase? Is it when the site launches? Is it when they get their first order?
I mean, all of it, really, probably.
It depends on the client. It depends on the person. And you may have 5 people at the client that all have different feelings. The copywriter at the client may feel like the project's over when they're done writing copy for the website, which is, oh, by the way, never. The designer may feel like they're done when the wireframes are selected and we put up the skins and everybody feels good about it. And now we have a template that we can build going forward. The person who's in charge of the financial aspect may feel like it's over when the website cost has been recouped by additional business that has come in from the website. The CEO may feel like the website is done when they can say to their friend, have you seen our new website? And somebody can type it in and go see it. So you may have multiple people at the client who have completely different definitions of what accomplish is. 2 things we need to remember. Number 1, we need to know what accomplish means to the client. And number 2, we need to track our progress towards it so we can celebrate them when we accomplish their goal, not our goal, their goal. If their goal is not the day the site launches, but the day it makes money, they're not going to have a big kickoff party or a big launch party with you. Let's have the party when we make $1,000 from the new website or 10,000 or whatever it may be. Let's tie it. And that also is how we get our recurring revenue. We'd say, hey, look, we're going to launch the site, but that's not the end of this project. We're going to fine tune it and tweak it. Now, when you say those things, they hear, oh, you're just going to charge us additional money to keep us on a retainer going forward after the site launches. No. What we're going to do is we're going to analyze the traffic in the first month to figure out what parts aren't working as well as we thought. Wait, there might be parts that aren't working. Yes, in every website launch, there are parts that will not work as well as we thought. Every single one. The question is, are we going to fix that at day 30? Or are you going to fix that 5 years from now when you redo the website? It's up to you. I'd rather fix it on day 30. What do you think?
Yeah.
We're having a completely different conversation.
Is it beneficial though to like say that example, like make $1,000 on a website, but like, that there's like 8 milestones before that are signs of progress. Do you think important then to almost have them buy into those are like mini accomplishments to be celebrating? Maybe not as grandiose as the big one, but like in one of our, in our program, we're like, hey, like, I know you want this, but like, there's these 3 things that we see that happened first that like, we're going to celebrate and we're going to want you to celebrate with us because we know that they're leading indicators to us getting to this, this goal, which is the goal that why you're here, which often, while it's not the end result all the time, it often is the sooner we can get one of those into the experience, they're like, oh, like the process works. Like I get it. Like I can see, yes, I didn't make the $100,000 yet. I know that's like a year out, but like you just made me five, and like I got it. Like I'm convinced in this process, sort of thing. Like, do you see that being valuable?
I absolutely see it being valuable. The one thing I would caution folks against is thinking that they're going to be super excited about celebrating what you think is an accomplishment.
Fair, fair, yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So we can invite them to celebrate that. We can
Mm-hmm.
explain why to celebrate that. This is like losing weight. Somebody says, I want to lose 20 pounds. In their mind, losing 17 is failure. Stop and think about that.
Yeah,
Somebody
yeah.
says, I want to lose 20 pounds and they lose 17. The story most people will tell themselves is, see, couldn't get it done. Didn't get
Yeah.
those last 3 pounds. Up, failed again, do. Now, if we say to them, hey, great. Do you know how we lose 20 pounds? In 5-pound increments. The first 5 pounds are going to come off in a week. The second 5 pounds are going to come off in 2 weeks. The third 5 pounds are going to come off 2 months later. And the final 5 pounds are going to come off 6 months after that. That's our timeline. We're going to celebrate at each one. We're going to celebrate 5 because that's getting us to 10. We're going to celebrate 10 because that's getting us to 15. We're going to celebrate 15 because that's getting us to 20. But if we only focus on 20, we'll never get to 20. We'll get to 17 and we'll stop and you won't be happy. That's how you shift the conversation to making it about your expertise and your knowledge, which people want.
Yeah.
Combined with your guidance, your empathy, and your compassion for the fact that they have a different goal than you have, but help them get to the goal instead of saying that your goal is more important than theirs.
And when you do that, then you will probably end up somewhere in phase 7, which is adopt, and even 8, which is advocate. So all of this can happen and I don't want to brush over those two, but I feel like there was a stat somewhere in the book or a comment about the book, like something about 2 through 6 or something like that.
Yeah. What's
The most
interesting is,
often missed.
yeah, we don't get the chance to get to phase 7, adopters, your loyal customers, or phase 8, advocate, your raving fans, if you haven't done the other 6 phases leading up to 7 and 8. Lots of people want to just jump to number 8. Hey, thanks so much for signing the contract. Who else do you know that might have need for web development services like us? It's like, oh my God, I want to take a shower. Stop it. It's like being on a date and having somebody say, hey, who else do you know might like to go on a date with me? Wait a minute, we're still on our date. And you want me to bring other people to the date? This just got awkward, right? So I absolutely want organizations to pay attention to phase 7 and phase 8, but I don't want you to jump to 7 and 8 unless you've done the work to build the foundation to get there.
I love it. And all these 8, if I'm correct, can happen and or should happen in the first 100 days?
Depends on your business, okay? Depends on your business. What the research shows is that a customer will decide to do business with you or not do business with you in the first 100 days. Somewhere between 20 and 70% of customers leave before the 100-day anniversary. So the reason why I want you to pay attention the first 100 days is that is the highest time period for defection. Now, depending on your business, you may not get to accomplish in 100 days. If they're doing a major website build, it may be 6 months. We're not going to get it done in 3. Great, no problem. We're still going to be working to make those first 100 days remarkable. And because we're not going to get to accomplish phase 6 in the first 100 days, we're going to be firmly ensconced in the acclimate phase when they're at about day 100. So we better make darn well sure that we've created some mini milestones for them to celebrate along the way, where they can have a sense of progress, where they can have a sense of accomplishment and achievement that will keep them moving forward outside of that 100-day time frame.
I love it. So I know we're at our time, and I mean, all of this is like reinforces the fact that like when we went back through this book, we're like, all right, we got to do this, we did this. And a lot of those things are lining up to that 100-day. And even when we were getting this wrong, because we were getting it wrong, we would lose people kind of in between month 3 and month 4. And so like it kind of aligns with that time window. So if you are experiencing that in your business and you haven't read this book yet, definitely go check out Joey's book, Never Lose a Customer Again. And he's actually coming out with a new book next year, which we'll have him back to talk about, Never Lose an Employee Again, which I'm excited about as well as we continue to build our team. So Joey, thank you so much for spending your time with us. Where can people find more about you so they can stay on top of the new book as well?
Well, I appreciate that, Greg. And again, I appreciate everybody who listened in. As you mentioned, the first book's called Never Lose a Customer Again. It's available in hardcover. It's available in ebook. There's an audiobook. So if you enjoyed me talking to you, I'll read you the book, right? Because I'm the narrator on the book. The best place to find me and to stay on top of things is at my website, which is joeycoleman.com. That's Joey, like a baby kangaroo or a 5-year-old. Coleman, Coleman, like the camping equipment company, but no relation, joeycoleman.com. I'll also say, because we're on a podcast, we've got a podcast that's all about customer and employee experience. I do with my good friend Dan Genghis. It's called The Experience This Show. It's 30 minutes every week in 3 little segments of customer experience and employee experience delight. So we do a little positive story, some key takeaways for your business, 3 of them. It's great for a commute. It's great for a workout because they're in little 10-minute chunks. So if you are a podcast fan, come check out The Experience This Show. We'd love to have you listen.
Love it. We'll link all those up in the description below. And thank you again so much for your time. I really appreciate you.
Thanks, Greg. Appreciate it.